Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you, oh my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear.
Much great to see you. Good morning. I'm very excited to be able to fill in for Gavin this morning. I got almost the full Gavin treatment today because Bill teach Bible class, and now I get to preach the sermon. If only I could lead sing you. I'd be able to do everything. That'd be it.
Be careful what you ask for.
No, if you heard me sing, you would know. Anyway, I'm excited about the lesson that I have for us today. It's one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament. So we're going to be in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 5. Those of you who were here for Bible class this morning and heard that lesson, you may think, man, didn't we get enough Old Testament? Yeah, sorry. You still get more Old Testament to it. And we're going to talk about a guy named Naaman. And Naaman is very important in the Bible because he's a gentleman who we learn a lot from in many ways. I remember we were taught Sunday school class or whatever. Naaman's one of those guys that you talk about, oh, he went down to the Jordan River and he dipped 7 times and he came out clean. And it's one of those just great stories that's a good Sunday school lesson. But there's so much more to it than that. And there's a lot going on there. Sometimes the path to salvation is clearer and more specific than how to live after. Have you ever found that? Yeah, the Bible can be very clear about how to become a Christian. But then what? And we're going to see with Naaman, he gets it. He understands how to be healed. So he gets that down with some obstinance there, with some objection. But then he has some questions about how to live now. And I think we'll be surprised at some of the direction that he's given, or lack thereof, as you will. And so let's learn a little bit about Naaman. Naaman in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1. Now Naaman, captain of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man with his master, and highly respected, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man was also a valiant warrior, but he was a leper. Okay, the Hebrew word there just talks about infectious skin disease. So whether it was true leprosy or whatever, he had some skin condition that was very obvious. It was very infectious. But yet, despite that flaw, he was able to achieve a great position in the nation of Aram. Aram is where modern-day Syria is. So just to give you kind of a picture there. And Aram and Israel are not exactly friends. Okay, they fought back and forth over the years. We'll see that a little bit more here. But we're going to find that even though Naaman is from Aram, not one of God's chosen people, not an Israelite, God is going to have him be healed. And it's going to be a lesson for the rest of us, so that we can see what it takes to achieve that salvation that God has promised to all of us. Now here he has this one flaw. All these things, think about this description of Naaman. He's a captain, or some verses say commander in the army. He's a great man. He's highly respected. He's had victory. The Lord has given him victory. But then he's a valiant warrior, but, right? Isn't it funny when there's the but? You can have all these things in your life that make you really amazing, really special. But there can be a but. And in this case, it's a pretty severe one. He was a leper. He had this infectious skin disease. And that was something how he was identified with. If you ever have had any personal flaws. Looking out at this group, I doubt there's very many people with personal flaws. You know, my biggest flaw is how good looking I am. That's tough. It's a challenge. But, you know, when you've been identified many ways, you have all these great characteristics. You may even have your own self-image. But we all sometimes will cling in a bad way to this flaw. We have this negative tape that goes through my head. Oh yeah, I'm smart, but, and you fill in the blank. Oh, I'm a good person, but I'm a good husband, wife, son, daughter, whatever. But we'll add this but in there. We know sometimes our own flaw. And sometimes others know that too. You know, if you've ever been someone, maybe they had a weight issue. I'm not calling anyone out other than myself. You know, and so for Mike, oh, you know, that big guy, if they were being generous, that tall guy. Occasionally, if someone didn't like me, you know, that fat guy. You know, there are ways that we get identified, right? And sometimes it's our flaw. And we've seen this over, oh, you know, the guy with the stutter. Oh, the one with the hair lip. Oh, you know, the one that has the port wine stain. You know, that we use these identifiers and maybe not always aware of the consequences on that person, but sometimes we have our own negative identifiers, and it's hard to break from that. And Naaman is a man who is powerful, but he has this flaw. He has this issue in his life, and he needs to overcome it. So as we read on, it says, now the Arameans had gone out in bands and had taken captive a little girl from the land of Israel. And she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, I wish that my master were with the prophet who is in Samaria. Then he would cure him of his leprosy. And Naaman went in and told his master, saying, thus and thus spoke the girl who is from the land of Israel. Then the king of Aram said, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver and 6,000 shekels of gold and 10 changes of clothes. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, and now as this letter comes to you, behold, I have sent Naaman my servant to you, that you may cure him of his leprosy. And it came about when the king of Israel read the letter that he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and then to make alive? That this man is sending word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? But consider now and see how he is seeking a quarrel against me. So there's a lot going on here, so let's unpack that a little bit. So first off, we can see how there's been this conflict between Aram and Israel, because there's these band of raiders that had gone into Israel. So you think of these border skirmishes. So, and they would take captives. So here's this girl, little girl, brought back, and now she's a servant in the household of Naaman. Specifically, she's a servant for his wife. And so it's well known that he has this condition. Maybe it's very visible. You know, again, it's how he's identified. So maybe there's warnings. Don't talk about it. You know, maybe when you were a kid, you go, don't ask grandma about the hairy mole on her nose. You know, whatever. We all, you know, maybe we've been in situations like that. And, you know, so this little girl, she knows something though. She knows that there is a way for him to be healed. She has a faith, right? She's a little girl who has a faith in the prophet of Israel. Turns out that's Elisha, not Shah, Elisha. And so she tells her mistress about it. So then the wife goes to Naaman, tells him about it. Naaman goes to the king and tells him about it. They gather all this money to go on this trip. He writes a letter, goes to the king. All of this stuff has happened. Why? A little girl said something that appealed to the desperation in Naaman. Have you ever been desperate? Have you ever been desperate to be cured of something? Desperate to be healed? We know that feeling. Naaman felt that. I don't care who she is. Oh, wait, she thinks I can be healed? Yes. Yes, we're doing it. Let's go. She's just a little girl. I don't care. We're going. Let's do this. He is convinced. The wife is convinced. The king is now convinced. Who's not convinced? The king of Israel. Isn't that funny? Everyone has faith except the man who probably should have the greatest faith. And that's true. The more I read the Old Testament, the more I realize how much I am like these Israelites. My faith can waver back and forth like nothing. You know, here's a little girl to remind us of the importance of faith. So they get all this together. By the way, the amount of money that's talked about in today's figures would be roughly like $6 million. So not an insignificant sum for even back then. And so they go and they're like, I don't want to leave the little girl just yet. Think about, first off, the courage to speak up. But secondly, why? Why does she care about Naaman? She's a captive. She's a prisoner who's forced into sort of a slavery situation. They don't call her that, but that's what she's in. And yet, there's something about her or something about Naaman that makes her want to share this information. Because of her faith. Maybe it says a lot about Naaman. We just read all these great characteristics about Naaman. Maybe the way he was with servants, that he treated them kindly or with compassion or at least fairly. So there's something there that this little girl is willing to risk it. But also think of this. What's the danger to her? Naaman comes back. Nothing happened. No healing. Find that little girl and kill her. Right? He's powerful. So there's a consequence there that could be for her. She doesn't know. She doesn't get to see the story till the end. That's sometimes how we live our lives, right? We don't know the story. We don't know what's in there for us yet, how things are going to play out. But she is willing to take that risk for this man who she should have no reason to want to help. But she does. It's also interesting that the king of Aram is willing to write this letter to an enemy. Okay, now he owes him, right? The money's not necessarily just for the king of Israel. It could be. So maybe that's why he sends all this money, because he thinks somehow the king of Israel is going to be it. Remember, too, what did the little girl tell her mistress? There's a prophet in Samaria. But what does Naaman do? Goes to the king. Oh, king, write a letter to that king. They've kind of gone up a couple levels, right? That wasn't the information they were given. But probably as most men, they think they knew better. They knew better than the little girl. A prophet, what is that? That's not important. King to king, that's where things get done. We need that to happen. Make this so. And we can be like that a lot of times, right? We miss the little details of what God wants. You know, we jump to the big picture sometimes when we don't understand the things that we have to do to get to the big picture. We think we understand when we don't. Naaman didn't understand. He didn't see it. The king of Aram didn't understand. The king of Israel didn't understand. Who understood? The little girl. Who else understood? Elisha. We're going to see that here in a little bit. Okay. So I want you to picture though. So now here they're on their way. Naaman leading the column because there's a lot of money. So where there's money, what do you need? Soldiers. Okay, there's servants that have to take care of that army. There's animals. There's wagons being carried because it is a lot of money. I don't even know what the 10 changes of clothes would equal, but there's a lot of money. There has to be food for this. This is a bit of a journey. It's not just like we're going down the street. You know, they have to go to Samaria. They're going to the palace of the king. And these are the northern tribes of Israel. That's where Elisha is. So they go to the king of Israel. So here they are. Think of all the pomp and circumstance. You know, every 15 minutes, they're blowing a trumpet. Here comes Naaman, commander of the armies of Aram. You know, they want everyone, as they go through these villages on the way, you know, everyone's coming out. Who are they? It's Naaman, the commander of the king's army. You know, so big excitement. He's there, you know, leading the way, going along. That can kind of fill your head too, right? But he's desperate. He can't wait to get there because there's a hope that I can be healed. He has hope. So no matter what everyone else is doing, no matter the cheers, the adulation, it doesn't matter. He has a focus. I want to be healed. And that's the challenge sometimes for us. We can listen to the wrong things. Excuse me. We can listen to the wrong things. We aren't always as desperate as we think we might be. I think at different times in my life where I've had different things that have gone on that have been negative or hurtful or harmful, and I could get desperate thinking, I need God. Oh God, and I'll pray. Well, then that thing might pass. Or I learned how to live with it. Desperation can change. Desperation can become acceptance when we really don't want to take the steps. We're really that desperate. But Naaman, he is desperate. He wants this healing. But even with that, we're going to find he still objects to some things, which is kind of funny. Here he's gone on this big journey, this opportunity to be healed. But he's going to run into a couple of stumbling blocks. So the king is all upset, tears his robes. In verse 8, and it happened when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, that he sent word to the king, saying, why have you torn your clothes? Now let him come to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. I don't know about you. I love people that are confident. I feel so secure when someone knows what we're going to do. Most of the time, that's my wife. So I feel very confident then. But if you've ever worked for an employer, you're like, oh, what a great employer. He's got a plan. He knows what we're doing. We're being successful. This is awesome. Okay. Sometimes that's not always the case, right? But we see here, Elisha is a man of God. But he doesn't say, let him come so that he shall know there's a God in Israel. He says, let him know there's a prophet in Israel. That's kind of interesting. You know, he's kind of, it's about me. You're like, wait, Elisha, you meant to say God of Israel, right? No, let him know there's a prophet in Israel. He wants him to understand the position of who he is. That he is more important than Naaman. Power speaks to power, right? But Elisha wants Naaman to know who is, and the king of Israel, and ultimately the king of Aram, who is the one who is powerful here. I am, because I'm a man of God. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots, stood at the doorway of the house of Elisha. So I want you to picture that house. What do you think that house looked like? Is it some big mansion? It's like the king's palace? I doubt it. Maybe a little 1-room, 2-room, little shack in this village. Nothing too fancy. And Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. Pretty simple instruction. Right? Tells him, what did Naaman come for? What do I do? How can I be cured? Elisha tells him. But how does he tell him? He tells him through his servant, his messenger. Elisha can't be bothered to go out to the commander of the army of Aram to personally tell him what he needs to do. Elisha stays in his house. Naaman's at the doorway. Bang, bang, bang. You know, I'm here to see the prophet. Elisha's in the back reading a book. Drinking his coffee. Oh yeah. Go tell him, go to the Jordan River, dip 7 times, he'll be okay. The messenger goes and tells him, how is the messenger relaying that message? Sir, my master says, go to the Jordan and dip 7 times. And I'm sure Naaman's response was, that's great, I will do that. No. Naaman becomes furious. He was furious, filled with rage. You're that poor servant who's facing that. Or you're his servants, Naaman's servants around. You could feel the tension, right? I thought surely he would come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Wow. Not cure the commander of the army of Aram. Cure the leper. See, that's that negative self-take, right? That's the image in his mind of who he is. But he also wants a bit of a show. He wants to know. He wants to see something more than just having another messenger come to him and tell him what to do. He expects a different type of cure. And again, we can fall into that, right? We're desperate. We're praying to God. God, answer me. Here, help me. Let me get over this. And then God provides a way. That wasn't the way I wanted. I didn't mean that way. I meant some other way. Oh God, you never listen. You don't answer my prayers when God had answered all along. So he goes on and he's angry. He's going to leave. Oh, the river's back home. They're just as good. I'm going to go. And he goes away. He's angry. Verse 13. Then his servants came near and spoke to him. My father, had the prophet told you to do some great thing? Would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? So again, there's something about Naaman. The servants don't come up to him and say, kill him, destroy the prophet. Oh, this is embarrassing. Let's wipe this village out. No. They're like, let's try it. What do you have to lose? Right? That's the Hebrew. If you really dig into the Hebrew, that's what they said. Try it. Why not? So you know what Naaman does? He does it. So, see, there is some humility that cuts through that rage and that disappointment thing. There's enough humility to listen to his servants and go do it. And you know what happens? He does it. His flesh is restored. Isn't that amazing? It says like that of a little child. Think about the thousands of dollars some of us would have to spend to skin like a little child again. There's like laser treatments, micro needling, all these things. Hey, all you have to do is go dip in the Jordan River 7 times. You can have that youthful appearance again. No makeup, no spa treatments needed. So, Janice, we don't need the treatment spa day for the teens. What we need, take a trip to the Jordan River and that'll take care of it all. But we see here just that obedience brings about the cure. He is healed. And you can imagine, first time he comes out of the water, all right. Second time he goes in, nothing's happening. Maybe he's expecting a little clearing up, some, Third time, still nothing. 4th, 5th, 6th. And he might be any time along the way, he might have quit. This isn't working. I look like a fool. I'm out here in this river. Everyone is watching me. What happens if after 7 times nothing happens? I'm going to look like a fool. But he's desperate. He's desperate. So he does it. Does it the 7th time. Then he comes up clean, restored, cured, healthy. Now, Naaman could have gone on his way with his great entourage of people, just so excited. Aren't we like that sometimes? God answers our prayer. We're now healed or whatever. And we just go our merry way. Oh, wait, I probably should have thanked God. I probably should have said something to God about, wow, you really did a great thing for me. But we don't always think that way. I don't think that way. I forget what God does for me. Naaman comes back. Remember, you have all the money. When you return to the man of God with all his company, they came and stood before him and said, behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. So please take a present from your servant now. Now Elisha is willing to meet him. There could have been doubt in Elisha's mind. About, well, I don't know that this guy's going to do. We'll see. If he comes back, then I'll be bothered to talk with the guy. And sure enough, he comes back, and Elisha is happy to meet him, I think. So Elisha says, though, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will take nothing. And even though Naaman urged him to, he said, I don't want any of your money, I don't want your clothes, I don't want anything. More important than Naaman's healing is that he realizes who God is. Right? It's not just that he's healed. He now has this revelation. Right? He has an epiphany. Wait a second. The prophet of God said, do this. Now I'm healed. He's the God of Israel. None of my gods in Aram could do this. None of the other countries that I visited, their gods couldn't do this. Because remember, it's a pantheistic society. Every country, every region has its own gods. But in Israel, there's just the God of Israel. But even the Israelites probably forgot that. There were probably Israelites who didn't understand this like Naaman does, even though they were part of the chosen people. And he says, I see it now. I know there's only one God. And, I think Elijah's probably pretty excited about that. That's pretty cool. And so we see now, so here's our turning point for Naaman, right? He's healed. He's cured, right? That path to salvation was there. It was once he got over his opposition to some of it, his obstinance, he's healed. He's cured. Interesting enough, I don't want to make too big of a parallel with this. That word dipped in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew, is baptizo. Something to file away. Something to be thinking about. So he is now renewed. He's come out of that water. He's healed. He's clean. And he's ready to move on. But he's seen something that he doesn't know what to do. There's this God. This God is powerful. So he tells Elisha, so since Elisha won't take any of the money, he asks Elisha, can I take enough earth back with me to my home? Whatever 2 mules will carry. Can I do that? I don't even know if Elisha answers. Yeah, if you want to take dirt, take dirt. Take it. If you want it, have it. Why? Because he associates the power of God with the land of Israel. Because again, it's pantheistic. They have gods in every single country or region. They think something about that land is what's important. When they're planting their crops in Aram, they are praying to the God of Aram, give us a great harvest. When they're in Babylon, when they're in Persia, when they're in any of these places, they're praying to God, their gods, give us a harvest. They associate with the land. So he now associates the God of Israel with the land of Israel. I've got to take some of this land back so that I can worship on that. I can build a little altar. I can have a garden, whatever it's going to be. He's going to do that with this thing. And then he says he won't offer burnt offerings anymore to the other gods, only to the Lord. But then he has another dilemma here. So he sort of understands some of the things with God. He understands there's one God. He wants to worship that one God. He wants to offer sacrifices. But he's got one other problem, and he wants Elisha's advice. In this matter, may the Lord pardon your servant when my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon your servant in this matter. Rimmon is one of the gods of Aram. He mentions Rimmon 3 times. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Why? Why is he talking about Rimmon? It's on his mind. Because I'm going to be in this temple of a God I no longer believe in. And I, because of my position, am going to have to bow down to that God. And I'm going to have to look like I believe in that God. But I know it's not true. And look what Elisha says to him. He said to him, go in peace. What kind of answer is that? What is that? What do I do with that? Go in peace. Well, what do I do about this whole situation back in the temple? What's going to happen then? How's the God of Israel going to respond to me bowing down to another God? How's the God of Israel going to respond when it doesn't look like I'm worshiping him? It looks like I'm worshiping these other gods. What's going to happen? Is God going to forgive me? So Elisha doesn't go into a long treatise. I don't think I said that. Thank you. A long explanation of what to do. He just says, go in peace. And I think for us, we don't like those kind of answers, right? We have some spiritual problem. We have some issue in our life. We want direction. We want answers. Tell me, how do I fix this? What does God say about this? And we may ask that of people like Gavin. Come on, Gavin, you're supposed to know the Bible. Why can't you give me an answer? Go in peace. What is that? But that's all Elisha tells him. And you know what? Naaman had a long way back to try to figure out what's that mean. What's that mean, go in peace? Or it could also mean like go with God. And you know, we're sometimes good at this one. You know, if someone's sharing something with us, I will pray for you. Because I don't know what you should do. I'm not sure there's an answer, but I'll pray for you. And then maybe we do, maybe we don't. But, you know, we can be kind of guilty of that as well. But here, you know, he goes, what am I going to do in this situation? And you think about your own life. How often you are faced with a situation that you know is contrary to living the Christian life, and yet you're stuck. You know, what do? Do I speak up? Every single time a coworker curses around me, am I going to say, I don't really appreciate it when you use that kind of language? Or every time someone tells an off-color joke, I don't really like those kinds of jokes. And that can be very appropriate. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just pretend we didn't hear, or we move on, or we do something else. You know, maybe we're asked to just a white lie. You know, sometimes our boss is telling us to do something that we know is unethical. What do? I don't know. You have to decide for yourself. Go in peace is what I can tell you. You have ability to figure that out. God can lead you. And I believe that with Naaman, we never hear of Naaman again, but with Naaman, he probably figured some things out on the way back, which is great. So what do we do now? How do we handle this? I'll tell you what was exciting. You know who was the most excited to see him come back was not his wife, was not the king of Aram, not all his friends he left behind, but the little girl. The little girl. She was so excited. Yes, I knew it. I knew my faith was important. I knew it. She may not have been a little servant girl anymore. She may have a promotion after all that. But man, when we see God answer, we can be like that little girl. No, we can be so excited. Thank you, God. Thank you. And we just can really appreciate what God has done for us. We have a new conviction But you know what? Messy things are still going to happen. It's still going to get messy. So go in peace. That's my message. If any of you grew up Catholic, peace. Anyway, that is the end here. I think too, what's really good about that part is, you know how like you may come back from some very spiritual experience, this mountaintop experience, but then you have to come back to work. You come back to reality. It's hard. That's hard. That's when we need God, maybe more than when we were on the mountaintop. We need God now that we're back in the valley, back at work, back doing the things that are hard and difficult to do. So thank you so much for your attention this morning. If you have any needs, feel free to express those. Come forward, see Mark in the back, and we're happy to pray for you. And we'll go ahead and have a song.